Hey boys and girls, Ray from A2 here with another video for you. Today we are going to go over the California Department of Justice Firearm Safety Certificate Study Guide. This study guide has been printed to help you pass your firearm safety certificate examination. Anybody who wants to purchase a new firearm or transfer a new firearm to them must have a firearm safety certificate. A little about us: we are located in Orange County, California. We serve nationwide, but you can also find us on Instagram and on Facebook. Our Instagram is at @A2_firearms. A little about myself: I'm a lifetime firearm enthusiast. I am an NRA certified instructor in handgun, shotgun, rifle, multiple disciplines, and I'm also a chief range safety officer. I'm a USCCA certified instructor in concealed carry and home defense fundamentals and countering the mass shooter, as well as women's firearm training and defensive tactics. I'm also a California certified firearms instructor, certified to teach both firearm safety and CCW programs. I am currently certified by Riverside County Sheriff to perform their initial and renewal CCW certification courses. We also conduct the same courses for Orange County, LA County, San Bernardino County, and San Diego County. We also offer non-resident California concealed carry training. California has just recently started to offer CCW permits for non-residents wishing to be in the state of California in the next 12 months. So if you fall into that category, please message us and we'll be happy to help you out. You can take most of these courses online. We also do offer in-person training. In this course, we are going to discuss the laws and responsibilities surrounding gun ownership. Please understand, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a firearms instructor. For specific situational-based, case-by-case based information, I do advise you to consult an attorney who is an expert in use of force situations and gun laws. What I'm conveying to you is what's in the California Department of Justice Firearm Safety Certificate Study Guide and my own understanding of the laws and regulations. What I'm telling you should not be construed as legal advice. We're going to review firearm safety procedures. We're going to discuss what you can do next as a firearm owner to increase your readiness and firearm training to be able to protect yourself, your family, and your community. We're also going to have a good time, be respectful of one another, especially in the comment section. We're going to be courteous of one another, and we're going to provide everyone with the opportunity to learn and know where to go to have your questions answered. You can drop your questions in the comment section here on YouTube, and I'm happy to answer those as well. We're not going to discuss politics or use this time as a way of venting our displeasure about life. That really doesn't achieve anything. If you are unhappy with how things work, what I urge you to do is to vote. That's the only time that your voice actually makes a difference. By the end of this course, you should feel confident about your understanding of your rights and responsibilities as a new firearm owner. You should feel assured about your understanding of firearm safety. And if you have questions, again, please use the comment section to ask your questions. And you can also go to a2defensetraining.com and use the contact us section to ask your questions. You can download the study guide from the Office of Attorney General's website at oag.ca.gov. There's the long link. You can also search for Firearm Safety Certificate Study Guide on Google, and you'll be able to find that PDF manual. It's free for you to download, or if you want a hard copy, you can pay $5 and they'll send one to you. This video is up to date as of November 2025. The California Department of Justice manual was updated in 2025, so that previous video that we had up from last year, that's no longer completely up to date. It still has a lot of good information. There has been some updates to the law, so this is a more complete version and it's based on the 2025 update that they have made. The previous update was in 2020, so hopefully this is going to be relevant for another 5 years before we see something else happen. We do see firearm laws change often. It is your responsibility as a firearm owner to know and keep yourself up to date with what laws and regulations are applicable to you and the jurisdiction that you live in. If you later have a problem and you find yourself on the wrong side of the law and you refer to this video and say, well, Ray didn't include this in this video, that's not going to cut it. Every single one of us has the responsibility to keep ourselves appraised of what laws are applicable and the new laws that come into effect from time to time. California gun laws change constantly, so please make sure that you do your due diligence and you are made aware of any changes that might happen. Firearm ownership is every American's birthright and is provided to us by the Constitution of the United States. It's in the Second Amendment. A2 firearms, A2 stands for Amendment 2 of the Constitution of the United States. And the Second Amendment says that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is our power. It's something that we have as Americans provided to us, and we may choose to exercise that right or not. But with great power comes great responsibility, as the 20th century philosopher Uncle Ben has taught us. So that means that exercising the right to bear arms, exercising the right to own firearms comes with certain legal obligations and responsibilities. And when we do exercise that power, we need to also understand and be responsible for the power that we hold. Also, please understand, to successfully use firearms under stressful situations, which is for self-defense, you first have to have a thorough understanding of how these firearms function, and you also have to have had enough training to build the right muscle memory and confidence to be able to use firearms. These are not things that come in natural. It's not just a matter of pointing and shooting. There's a lot that goes into using a firearm, and it gets so much more complicated when you try to use your firearm in a stressful condition. A lot of times we see people that buy a firearm, they put it on the shelf and they think they're safe. Buying a firearm makes you safe, like buying a guitar makes you a musician. If you haven't taken training, you're not going to be able to know what to do with it, especially when your life is on the line. A lot of times I hear people say that, oh, you'll rise to the occasion. That's absolutely incorrect. Most defensive encounters happen in 5 to 9 seconds. In those conditions, in that short a time, you're not going to have the time and the ability to rise to the occasion, quote unquote. You're going to fall to the level of your training. So if you haven't had the right training, if you haven't developed the right muscle memory, then you're not going to be able to react in time to save your life. Most likely, you're either going to freeze, submit, or get into the flight mechanism of fight or flight. But most often what we see is people who just completely freeze and not be able to have the confidence to actually act. So what we're going to be discussing, aside from training and understanding how firearms function, is we're going to talk about facts and figures surrounding gun deaths. That's part of what's in the manual that Department of Justice has published. We're going to talk about laws and rules involving gun ownership, and we're going to talk about general rules of safe firearm handling. Then we're going to talk about categories of firearms. Obviously, there's a lot of different types of firearms. Each firearm operates slightly different than the next. So you have to be very, very much familiar with the firearm that you want to use, or the set of firearms that you want to use, in order to be able to use them safely and effectively. So we talk about different types of firearms in each of those categories, and we're going to talk about safe handling of each of those firearms. When you go to a firearm dealer in the state of California and go to purchase a firearm, you are required to do a safe handling demonstration. That means that you have to load and unload that firearm in the presence of your dealer and apply and remove a firearm safety device that comes with your firearm in that dealership in the presence of a California certified firearms instructor, such as myself. And usually there is one at every dealership at least. So we have to do that safe handling demonstration to demonstrate that you're able to load and unload, apply and remove a firearm safety device safely and without pointing your gun at things that don't need to have guns pointed at them, and without putting your finger on the trigger. That's very important. So to buy or transfer a gun to you in California, you must possess a firearm safety certificate. At this point, we've established that. There are a few exemptions to that. So federal firearm licensees, such as myself, or firearm dealers are exempted from this. California firearm dealers, what we call FFL 3s, which are FFLs that are collectors. So they're a federal firearm licensee for the purpose of collecting curio or relic only firearms. Those are exempted from having a firearm safety certificate. Active reserve, retired military, CCW permit holders in the state of California have already gone through more extensive training, so they're exempt from doing safe handling demonstrations. Postgraduates, police officer standard training, which is a nationally standardized way of training police officers. So if you're a graduate of a recognized accredited post program, you don't have to do a safe handling demonstration. There are some other categories. So for a complete list, go to the Office of Attorney General at oag.ca.gov/firearms, and you'll be able to see the full list there. But these are the main ones that most customers, most exempt customers would fall into these categories. Now, firearm accidents. The whole reason for requiring a firearm safety certificate is to reduce and hopefully remove accidental and unintentional issues surrounding firearms. So major causes of accident, what are those? We have ignorance and we have carelessness. Here are some scenarios that are printed in the study guide. Two young children are playing in their home and they find a loaded handgun with the magazine removed on a bedside table. One child was injured when that handgun was fired. These are actual scenarios. A handgun owner assumed a firearm was unloaded. While cleaning it, he accidentally fired the handgun, causing injury to himself. A hunter was walking with his finger loosely on the trigger of his rifle and distracted by a sudden noise behind him, he turns and accidentally fires his gun and he injures his buddy who was near him. So these are the things that can happen if you're not practicing gun safety, if you're not storing your gun properly, and if you're not taking in mind children and other unauthorized users around you that might be able to access the gun when they shouldn't. Basic gun safety rules must be applied all the time. It's not just a knowledge that you have, it's also practicing that knowledge that makes you safe. When we talk about major causes of gun accidents, ignorance is not knowing what to do. There's a lot of people that come through my dealership wanting to buy a gun, and they come in with the ignorance of not understanding how a firearm operates, how they need to practice gun safety. Those are basically, so not knowing the rules of firearm safety is one of the major causes of gun accidents. Now, carelessness is knowing the rules, but then not applying them. So getting careless, ignoring the rules, and just basically not applying it at all times. So we need to know those rules and we need to apply them every single time. So as a responsible gun owner, you must respect that firearms are dangerous. Yes, it's our right to own firearms, but you have to understand firearms can hurt people, firearms can kill people. You need to be aware and you need to be concerned about the safety hazards surrounding gun ownership. And you need to have the desire to practice that safe conduct. You have to develop a mindset for safe use and storage at all times. You have to build the knowledge of guns and gun safety. Not every gun is the same. Every single gun that you get, you have to educate yourself about how that gun operates. You have to also become skillful in handling firearms and applying your knowledge and understanding. Things like muzzle awareness and trigger discipline that we're going to talk about later, which is always you have to be aware of where, in what direction the muzzle of your gun, the tip of your gun, the tip of that barrel is pointing towards. And if that's a safe direction, if that's the direction of least consequence. Trigger discipline means you have to keep your finger off that trigger until you are ready to shoot. Going to our facts and figures. The data from 2021 shows 54% of all firearm deaths have been due to suicide, 43% murder, and 3% for other reasons. Those other reasons are accidental, negligence discharges involving law enforcement, or having undetermined circumstances. Here are some firearms facts and figures in California. Resulting from firearms, we have over 3,300 deaths, we have over 9,700 wounded, injuries, and we are the 32nd highest rate of gun violence in the US. We have over 1,600 suicides involving guns. We have over 1,600 gun-related homicides, and guns are the second leading cause of death among children and teens. We have 272 deaths per year. 21% of those are suicide, 75% are homicide or murder. In 2021, 45 women were fatally shot. 49% of intimate partner homicide victims are due to gun violence. We're the 45th highest societal cost of gun violence at $1,060 per resident. And half of the accidental injuries and deaths among children and teens happening at home are due to firearms. It's either the firearm not stored properly, it might be unlocked, or it might have been accessed from nightstands or other sleeping areas. So absolutely important to store your firearm safely, making sure it's unloaded. If it's not for defensive purposes, even if it's a loaded firearm, it needs to be stored absolutely securely to prevent unauthorized access. And who's unauthorized? It's children and people that don't have your authorization to use that firearm. So anybody but you who has not had permission from you to use that firearm is an unauthorized person. So we talked about 54% suicides using guns, 43% murder, and 3% that are others. So more than half of all suicides altogether involved a gun. So we talked about the 2021 figures. Obviously, to reduce some of these deaths and injuries from guns, we have to be able to address each situation. And the overarching cause of this is that guns are being accessed by people who should not access them. Bringing a gun into a household increases the risk of accidental injuries and death, suicide, all of these different things. So by being able to store the gun away from people who are not supposed to access those, children, unauthorized users, and people who are going through a mental health crisis, that means that we would be able to reduce every single piece of this pie and bring those numbers down. In terms of accidents, those are negligent discharges getting accessed by children. All right, let's talk about the rules of gun safety. Whether you follow the NRA's 3 rules, if you follow U.S. Concealed Carry Association's 4 rules, or you talk about California Department of Justice's firearm rules, whatever rules that you practice them all the time. We're going to go through the 6 rules, then we're going to break them down. So the 6 rules are: number 1, treat all guns as if they're loaded. Keep the gun pointed in the safest possible direction. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Know your target, its surroundings, and beyond. Know how to properly operate your gun, and store your guns safely and securely to prevent unauthorized use. You have to store guns and ammunition separately. All right, so going through these, let's break them down a little bit more. So treat all guns as if they're loaded. Even if you have just unloaded it, you have to check every time. If you're unable to check, leave it alone, seek help. So many times people unload a gun, they put it aside, and then later on they may reload it or something and they forget, they go back and they think that gun is unloaded. Then they start doing other things with it, pointing it in directions they shouldn't point, pulling the trigger when they shouldn't be pulling the trigger, and that causes catastrophe. Every single gun is always, always, always loaded. Even if you have just unloaded it, if the action is open and you can see there's no round in it, you still have to treat it as if it's loaded. If you don't have enough knowledge to check if that gun is unloaded, leave that gun alone and go talk to someone who's more knowledgeable about guns and can show you what to do and how to check if that gun is unloaded. You have to keep the gun pointed in the safest possible direction. That means muzzle awareness. The muzzle of the gun, the pointy end of the gun, always needs to be in a safe direction. The safe direction is when accidental discharge is not going to cause injury, damage, or death. You do not point a gun at anything you're not willing to destroy. You only point the gun at objects you intend to shoot. Simply YouTube firearm accidents and see the catastrophes that have been caused by people ignoring this rule of gun safety and pointing the gun at things, thinking it's empty, thinking that nothing is going to happen, and then ending up with something that they regret for the rest of their life. Your gun should never be pointed towards yourself or another person unless you're actively defending yourself from that person in a deadly force situation. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. The finger needs to be off the trigger and off the trigger guard, and it needs to be high on the gun frame. You have to get into this habit. You have to develop this muscle memory. Simply practice putting your gun down and then picking it back up using this trigger discipline. So as you're picking up the gun, the gun comes up with it being pointed in a safe direction and with your finger being off the trigger and off the trigger guard. If your gun is on the table, not pointed in a safe direction, the first thing you do before you pick it up is you adjust it and reorient it in a safe direction. Then you go and pick up your firearm. You have to get into this habit. You have to develop this muscle memory. As a firearm dealer, I see people coming into my shop all the time, and the first thing they do is they pick up the gun like this and they're pointing it in front of them, which is pointing it at me. So please practice this, and this is going to reduce so many accidents that are avoidable. If you stumble, if you get startled, if you get into anything that would cause you to have an adrenaline rush, all of those things are going to cause your muscles to tighten up. And when this muscle tightens up, this finger is going to squeeze. So if your finger is on the trigger, or if it's on the trigger guard, it can very easily get squeezed into the trigger guard and on the trigger, and then getting that trigger to be pulled when it doesn't need to be pulled. That's why we talk about the trigger finger being high on the weapon frame. Also, there's such a thing as a sympathetic squeeze. So when you go and grab something with one hand, the other hand wants to also tighten up. The hands want to mirror one another. So if you're walking around with your finger on the trigger and then you go and grab something with your other hand, there's every chance that this trigger finger is going to squeeze the trigger, it's going to press the trigger, and it's going to cause a discharge. So get into the habit of maintaining trigger discipline at all times, and you won't fall victim to any of these accidents. Know your target, its surroundings, and its beyond. So you have to know what's in front of, what's next to, and what's behind your target. Bullets can penetrate targets and go beyond. Bullets can miss the target and hit things on the left and right. And bullets will hit things that are in front of your target before they even reach your target. So if you're in doubt, don't shoot. If you don't have a safe backdrop, do not shoot. If you're unable to identify your target, you cannot shoot. We've had people that have shot at movements, at shadows, at things that they weren't able to identify, only to realize later that it was an innocent bystander. We've had people that shot at a movement coming into their house thinking someone's breaking into their house, only to realize that it was their teenage son or daughter that snuck out of the house, and now they're sneaking back in, and now they ended up causing a tragedy and murdering their own son or daughter. So please identify your target before you shoot. Know how to properly operate your gun. You have to know the mechanical characteristics of every gun that you own. And every gun is going to be a little bit different than the next gun. So don't assume just because one gun operates a certain way that they all work the same way. You have to know how to cycle your gun, which is to load, cock, decock, and unload your gun. You have to know how to clear malfunctions. Guns are mechanical devices. From time to time, they can malfunction. So you have to understand how to clear those malfunctions safely. And if you don't know any of these, ask your dealer or your firearms manufacturer for more information. You can also check out the other videos that we have on YouTube. We have a comprehensive library of videos to show you how to maintain different guns. We have videos on how to clear malfunctions. YouTube University has good stuff and it has bad stuff. One of the reasons we started putting up this content is because we realized that there's a lot of bad information on YouTube. There's a lot of videos that show you incorrect ways of maintaining your gun that can actually cause damage to your gun, damage to you, and make your gun non-functional in a self-defense situation. So we started putting up some content that we know to be true and we know to be factual, we know to be a proper way of operating and maintaining a gun so that you can operate your gun safely. So if you're in doubt, please check out our videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and like those videos and share it with anyone who might benefit from it. Store your gun safely to prevent unauthorized access and separate from the ammunition. Even if the gun is not in your hands, it's somewhere, and you have to think about where it is, who can access it, and whether or not it is safe. You have to use California approved firearm safety devices. We're going to talk about where you can find the list of approved safety devices, but it's also recommended to store your guns unloaded in a locked container and in a different location from its ammunition, and that adds another layer of safety so that if someone accesses the ammo or the gun, they don't have the other part to cause an accident or a catastrophe. For maximum safety, use a locking device and a storage container together. So lock the gun with a cable lock or a trigger lock, then put that in a safe so that even if someone bypasses one level of security, there's still another backup to make sure that gun still can't be loaded or fired. Some additional points: don't handle guns when you are emotional. If you're angry, if you're depressed, if you're going through any kind of emotional crisis, and that's not a good time to handle guns. Never shoot into the air. We talked about that initially. A bullet that leaves the gun and goes into the air comes back down to the ground at the same speed as it left the muzzle. That basic laws of physics. So up in the air is never ever a safe direction to point your gun. A lot of times we see people are shooting, then they go to do a magazine change. That gun comes up like this, where people call this a workspace, and they go and do the magazine change, and then they go back to shooting. That's absolutely an unsafe firearm practice. If you're shooting and you need to do a magazine change, that gun comes back in. Again, point it towards your target or in a safe direction. Magazine gets dropped, new magazine goes in. That gun can never be pointed up. Don't shoot at water, flat or hard surfaces. The bullet can absolutely ricochet off of water. You've all skipped stones when you were kids, right? So same thing can happen to a bullet. If you shoot at flat or hard surfaces, again, the bullet can ricochet. When you're handing the weapon to someone, hand them the weapon only after making sure it's unloaded and the cylinder or action is open. So you have to take the magazine out. You keep the action open, then you hand it to someone. And when you're getting a firearm from someone, check to make sure it is unloaded and that the action and cylinder are open. So absolutely important thing to practice when you are in a group and you're handling firearms. Don't mix guns with alcohol or drugs. These things will absolutely affect your judgment. They affect your motor functions. So you have to be in absolute control of your faculties when you're handling firearms. Your blood alcohol level has to be 0. It's not like driving. It's not 0.08. It has to be 0. Use eye and ear protection at all times when you're firing guns. The noise can absolutely damage your hearing. All the things that come out, the gases, the debris and everything, it can get into your eye and it can damage your eyes. So use eye and ear protection when you're handling firearms. So throughout this course, I'm going to put up the tests that are in the firearm safety manual. I'm going to give you some time to go over this test yourself, and you can hit the pause button. If you do not want me to give you the answer, I recommend just hitting the pause button, answering these questions yourself. There's page numbers at the end of each question that refers to where in the manual you can find answers to these, but answer them yourself first and then we'll go over the answers. Question number 1, again, pause if you don't want to hear the answers because I'm going to read the questions and then I'm going to provide the answer. Question number 1 is safe practice when handling a firearm is to rest your finger on the outside of the trigger guard or along the side of the firearm until you're ready to shoot. And imagine that it's safe. We talked about how a squeeze, a startle can easily cause your finger to get onto the trigger and press the trigger. So finger needs to be high up on the weapon frame, off the trigger guard. To know your target, its surroundings, and beyond, you must consider that if the bullet misses or completely passes through the target, it could strike a person or object. That is true. Drinking alcohol while handling firearms is safe if your blood alcohol level remains below the legal limit. That is false. The legal limit for alcohol in your blood is 0. This is not like driving. There's a legal limit of blood alcohol level for driving, and that's 0.08%. It's not the same for firearms. There is no legal limit for blood alcohol level when it comes to handling firearms. Which of the following safety points should you remember when handling a firearm? A, never shoot a firearm in the air in celebration. Yep, you should remember that. Do not fire at water, flat or hard surfaces. Yep, you should remember that. wear ear and eye protection when shooting a firearm. So the correct answer is all of the above. Number 5, as a safety measure, your firearm should always be pointed A, to the north. That's a compass, guys. It's not a gun. B, in the safest possible direction. Yep, that's the one. C, up. We talked about it. Up is almost never, ever a safe direction to point a gun. And D, down. A lot of times down is a safe direction, but what if your toddler is crawling on the ground? Is that a safe direction? No. Up, inside a home, bullets can pass through drywalls, they can pass through windows, they can pass through doors. Same thing as up. So if fire your gun in the house, it's gonna either go to the second story, or if it's a single story house, it can puncture through and go beyond the boundaries of your house. So that's not a safe direction. And we talked about it outside. The bullet that leaves the muzzle and goes into the air comes back down to the ground at the same speed as it left the muzzle. That's basic laws of physics. So up is almost never a safe direction, unless you have built some kind of a boundary up there on your roof that can absolutely stop a bullet. 6, one of the safety rules is to know how to properly A, clear a malfunction, B, operate your firearm, C, load your firearm, D, clean your firearm. And the correct answer is B. You have to know how to safely operate your firearm. Clearing a malfunction is actually one of the parts of operating your firearm. Loading your firearm is also a part of knowing how to operate your firearm. So A and C are actually a subset of choice B. All right, let's talk about guns and children. Here's the law. If a child takes possession of your gun and does something with it, you are held responsible. This can be a misdemeanor or a felony. So if the child just grabs your gun and uses that gun, they take it out of the house, they go to a public place, unauthorized usage, they can carry it to a public place or school or other place. It can result in injury or death. So all of these things can put you in trouble unless you have stored your firearm in a locked container, or you've locked it with a locking device, and that locking device is on the roster of California firearm safety devices. Let's break some myths. Some people say kids don't have enough strength to press a trigger. A toddler's thumb is twice as strong as any other finger. And a lot of times they go and press triggers with their thumb. And if you are pressing a trigger with your thumb, where is that muzzle pointed at? Invariably, it's pointed at your face. Think about other children, not just your own children, people that might be coming to visit your house. Your kids may be trained in firearm safety, but are other kids that coming to your house safe and trained with firearm safety? Guns need to be stored unloaded, locked with a device, in a locked container, and separate from ammo. That's the recommendation. So it needs to be unloaded. Then you put a trigger lock or a cable lock that goes through the action of the firearm, and then you put it in a locked container. It can be a gun box, a gun safe, a vault, and then the ammo is separate in a different location. Talk to your children about guns. Children are curious, and if you hide guns, if you store it up on a shelf, if you try to make it a mystery, it just actually increases that taboo and increases their urge and drive to try and get their hands on it. Talk to them when they show signs of interest, when they start to ask questions. Talk to them as honestly and openly as possible, and talk to them in a manner that they can relate to. Tell them about the differences between real guns and fake guns. Let them know how a real gun can hurt or kill people. Better yet, my personal recommendation is, if you are a firearm household, don't have toy firearms. A toy gun is just basically a gun that instills bad behavior. If I have toy guns at home and my kids are going and pointing it at each other and pressing triggers, that goes against following universal rules of gun safety. I've practiced trigger discipline and muzzle awareness so much that even when I go and pick up my Dyson vacuum, my finger is right here until I'm actually ready to vacuum the house. That's a safety muscle memory that I've developed. I don't want to have my finger on a trigger of a device that has triggers that mimic a firearm. So if you have toy guns at home and your kids are playing with that, then that will translate into, if later on you're teaching your kids about firearm operation, that same thing that they've practiced years and years in the home is going to translate into practicing it with firearms as well. Also, instill a mindset of safety and responsibility. When we say things to children and we don't behave the way that we tell them they need to behave, they will look at your actions more than they listen to your words. So if you're practicing gun safety, they will mimic that more than just saying something. If you talk about never pointing a gun at anything that doesn't need guns pointed at them, but then you're handling the firearm and you're pointing it every which way, that doesn't cut it. So you have to instill a mindset of safety and responsibility, and you have to practice gun safety in front of your children as well, so that they understand what it is and how they should behave around guns. When kids encounter guns, there are 4 rules: stop, don't touch, leave the area, and tell an adult. Those are the 4 rules that we need to teach our kids. Stop doing whatever you're doing. If you come across a gun, don't touch the gun. Do not take the gun. That includes taking that gun and giving it to an adult, putting it in a safe. Also means if another kid has a gun, don't try to take the gun away from them. Leave that area and tell an adult as soon as possible. Now, the American Academy of Pediatrics does mention, and I agree, that these warnings are not sufficient accident prevention measures. So don't just talk to kids about these 4 rules and think that everything is hunky-dory. You absolutely have to practice gun safety. You have to be aware of where all of your guns are at all times and whether or not they can be accessed. All right. So again, if you want, pause, answer the questions. We're going to go through these 6 questions pretty quickly. Number 1, toddlers lack the strength to pull the trigger of a firearm. That is false. We talked about that. Thumb strength. Number 2, you may face misdemeanor or felony charges if you keep a firearm where a child obtains and improperly uses it. That is true. Number 3, there's no such thing as being too careful with children and firearms. That is true. Number 4, an important lesson children should learn is that firearms are not toys. That is true. Number 5, the 4 safety rules for kids if they see a firearm are: stop, don't touch, leave the area, and tell an adult. Number 6, child safety precautions only apply if you have children. That is false. All right, so moving on to operation and safe handling. All right, so California Penal Codes section 26850 and 26860 talk about you doing a safe handling demonstration. And we're going to demonstrate that with different types of handguns and long guns that you might be looking to purchase. So we're going to go through semi-automatic handguns. We're going to go through the double action and single action revolvers. And we're going to go through the most long guns. There's some more in the firearm safety study guide. They're not as common as the ones that we do have here. We want you to have a thorough understanding of what to do in terms of safe handling demonstrations. Safe handling demonstrations always start with a gun locked with a firearm safety device. Usually the 2 firearm safety devices are either a trigger lock that gets installed on the trigger of a firearm, like so. So it basically blocks the trigger from being able to operate, or it is a cable lock that goes through the action of the firearm. So this is the most common. This is what comes with your firearm. You have to do the safe handling demonstration with the firearm safety device that comes with your firearm. So we're gonna basically use the cable lock because that's almost every single firearm that you buy in the state of California usually either comes with these, or even if it doesn't come, then you're required legally to purchase one at the firearm dealership unless you have a safe or a gun vault at home and you sign an affidavit. You have to perform the entire safe handling procedure by maintaining muzzle awareness and trigger discipline. So let's say you are the DOJ certified instructor that I'm doing a safe handling demonstration, and let's say this is a safe direction that firearm can be pointed in. This is, again, the training firearm that we talked about. So if at any point during that safe handling demonstration, I go to remove the magazine and I point the gun in an unsafe direction, which is at you, the firearm instructor, Now I've failed that safe handling demonstration. If at any point my finger gets on the trigger, now I've failed that safe handling demonstration. So we're going to go over revolvers first. Here's a revolver. Now we're going to real guns. So we're going to go through revolvers, parts, and operations. So revolvers usually have a rotating cylinder. They have a rotating cylinder in the shop. That direction and this direction are both safe directions. So I'm going to flip this. So revolvers usually have a rotating cylinder. Usually there's about 5 or 6 chambers. Lately, we've seen revolvers that have 7 chambers as well. The action of the trigger or hammer lines up one of these chambers. So the holes that you put bullets in or the rounds cartridges in, the action of the hammer is going to line up a cylinder with the hammer and with the barrel. So here's the hammer, here's the barrel. And then if you press the trigger, that hammer is going to hit the firing pin. The firing pin is going to hit your cartridge, and that's going to fire the weapon. You can release the cylinder by pressing the cylinder release, and it swings outwards, and you can load and unload that way. There are a couple ways to load. There's one way to load. There's a couple ways to unload. So to load, you get the individual cartridges and you put it into each cylinder, and then you close the cylinder. To unload, if you fired all your guns or if you want to unload your gun, there's a couple ways to do that. One is you can turn this upside down and the cartridges are going to fall. If that's not a safe direction, you can press right here on this ejector rod, and that's going to push the rounds out, and then you can fish them out individually. Revolvers can be single action or double action. Let's talk about what single action means and what double action means in the first place, and then we'll talk about single action and double action revolvers. When we talk about single or double action, we're talking about the actions that pressing a trigger will cause. So if I press the trigger on this revolver, the first thing that's going to happen, the first action is that it's going to cock this hammer. You can see this hammer is getting cocked. The second action, if I continue to press, is it's going to release the hammer and it's going to fire the gun. So 2 actions, hence double action. I can also fire this revolver in single action mode. I can cock the hammer. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but as I cock the hammer, look what happens to the trigger. Now this trigger is in single action mode. So if I press the trigger, all it does is it releases the hammer. So single action. Some revolvers are single action only. That means if the hammer is uncocked, I cannot press the trigger. I have to cock the hammer because the trigger is single action only. So I can only pull this and it will release the hammer. But if the hammer is not cocked, the trigger cannot cock it for me. A little bit older school, you may have watched cowboy movies where they shoot like this. So they're actually rapidly cocking the hammer every single time, and then they're using the trigger finger to fire the gun. So this is called a single double action revolver because the trigger can be operated both in single action and in double action. This is called a single action only revolver. So the trigger cannot work in double action. We also have double action only revolvers. Revolvers that have a concealed hammer. So you cannot physically cock the hammer. So you have to use the trigger in double action every time. So we have all of those different variations. Here are the parts of a revolver, whether it's single action or double action. You have the barrel. You have a cylinder, which we demonstrated. We talked about the hammer. We have the cylinder latch. Notice how I turned the gun because I don't want to point it at you or at myself. The gun comes down, gets turned into only muzzle covering safe directions. You have to understand that. We have the cylinder latch or cylinder release. So pressing this forward will release the cylinder. Then we have the trigger guard, and we have the grip. The ejector rod, we talked about that. It can push the casings or live rounds out of the cylinders if you want to unload. We also talked about you being able to unload like this if up is a safe direction. Safe handling for a double action revolver. We're going to go through the steps. We're going to open the cylinder. We're going to visually and physically inspect each chamber to make sure each chamber is empty. We're going to remove the firearm safety device. While maintaining muzzle awareness, we're going to load dummy rounds into the chamber. One dummy round, we're going to rotate it in the next to fire position. And we're going to talk about what that means. We're going to close the cylinder. Then we're going to open the cylinder again and eject the round. And then we're going to visually and physically inspect each chamber, then reapply the firearm safety device. The firearm is always going to be handed to you with the firearm safety device. And the firearm safety device, the cable lock, basically goes through one of these chambers and it gets locked like so. I'm not going to lock it, obviously. This is just a demonstration, but this is how you would use a cable lock to apply a firearm safety device to a revolver. So by having this cable lock here, I can't close the cylinder and fire the gun. So it just renders the firearm inoperable. The other things that I've seen people do is they also pass this through the barrel. I don't like passing these things through the barrel of my firearm. I usually put it in like so. So in this particular configuration with a cable lock that usually comes, the order of what we just talked about doesn't apply. So the application and removal of the firearm safety device, you can move that step to wherever it's appropriate. So if this is how they've handed you the firearm, the first thing you have to do is to remove the firearm safety device. So then I'm going to get the key, unlock, take the cable out, and now I can do my safe handling demonstration. The cylinder's already open. I'm going to physically and visually inspect each chamber. Then I'm going to get one dummy round. I don't have a 38 special dummy round, which is what round goes into this firearm. So I'm just going to demonstrate it. So then I get a 38 special dummy round, put it here into the cylinder, and then I have to rotate it to the next to fire position. Let's talk about what that means. Take a look at the markings on this cylinder, and you'll see there's bullet-shaped markings all pointing down. So that means the cylinder, as the gun fires, it rotates in this counterclockwise fashion. Now see what happens when the hammer is cocked. The cylinder rotates one chamber when the hammer is cocked. So if I have a round here in the top chamber right here, and I close the cylinder like so, then I go to fire, you can see how before this hammer gets cocked and goes back forward, now that chamber at the top has moved one position and it's no longer at the top. The next chamber is going to line up and it's going to fire, right? So that means whatever chamber is at the top is not going to be the chamber that's going to be fired first. It's going to be this chamber because it moves counterclockwise. So if I load a round here at the top, I'll have to move that round back by rotating it clockwise. Then I can close. And now this cylinder, this is the next to fire cylinder because it's going to rotate one and get to the top. Makes sense? Okay. So we're going to open the cylinder, visually and physically inspect each chamber to make sure it's empty. We're going to load one round. We're going to move it to the next to fire position. Then I'm going to close the cylinder. Now this gun is loaded. That round that I just loaded, that dummy round, is going to be next to fire if I pull the trigger. Then closing the cylinder. Now we're going to open the cylinder again. Again, as you see, at no point here, my finger goes on the trigger. Then I'm going to eject that round. Mostly at any dealership, up is not going to be a safe direction. So I have to press the ejector rod to eject the round. The round comes out. Then I have to reapply the firearm safety device like so. And actually, before that, I have to visually and physically inspect each chamber to make sure it's empty. Then I apply my firearm safety device. And that's the end of the safe handling demonstration for a revolver. So one more time, we're going to open, round goes in, goes to the next to fire, close the cylinder. Then again, that's loaded. Now open the cylinder, eject the round, round comes out, visually, physically inspect each chamber, reapply the safe handling, reapply the firearm safety device, and that's the end of it. So takes longer when we're explaining it. It goes pretty quick when you're doing it. Now, one thing I want to mention is simply spinning a revolver to an empty chamber doesn't unload it or make it safe. We just talked about that whole next to fire chamber. So just because the chamber under the hammer is empty, it doesn't mean that your revolver is safe, because the cylinder rotates to the next chamber before you pull the trigger. So if you really want to make sure that if you pull the trigger, that revolver doesn't fire, that next to fire chamber needs to be empty. So if you spin the revolver and whatever chamber at 12 o'clock is empty, does not mean that your revolver is safe. So keep that in mind. Now, for a single action revolver, things change just a little bit. Single action revolvers, they don't have the cylinder doesn't rotate out. They have what we call a loading port. So this little port that opens and closes is going to expose one chamber, and you're going to be able to rotate the cylinder like so and go through different chambers, right? So for a single action revolver, it's a little bit more timely to load and to unload each chamber, because you have to individually unload each chamber by rotating that cylinder. It's an old school gun, so that's how it operates. We're gonna actually use the trigger lock. There we go. So we have the trigger lock. So to do this, we're gonna open the loading port. Then we're gonna physically inspect each chamber by rotating it and looking through to make sure it's all empty. It indeed is. I'm gonna take off the firearm safety device. This is a biometric lock that I'm using. It's a Bison trigger lock. And so then I'm going to load one dummy round into the chamber while maintaining muzzle awareness and trigger discipline. So the loading gauge is open, load my dummy round. Then I'm going to look at the cylinder and see in which direction the cylinder is going to turn. This one is clockwise. Again, not all revolvers work the same. Not all semi-automatics work the same. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to actually keep it open because it allows me to freely rotate the cylinder. I'm going to rotate it to the next to fire position. It's a little bit hard to see. So now it's right before the hammer falls. I'm going to close this. Then that's it. Now I'm going to unload. So I'm going to open the loading port again. I'm going to rotate this way. I'm going to use the ejector rod to go through and push this round out. I'm not going to point it up because that's not a safe direction. I'm going to close the loading port, and then I'm going to reapply my trigger lock. Again, all while maintaining muzzle awareness and trigger discipline. And that's about it. So again, going through the steps, you're going to open the loading gate, visually and physically inspect each chamber, remove the firearm safety device, While maintaining muzzle awareness, you're going to load the dummy round, rotate to next to fire position, then you close the loading gate. Because if you close the loading gate, the cylinder is going to just ratchet to the next chamber and it's going to stop. It's not going to freely ratchet. Most single actions that I know of. So you have to keep the loading gate open, then rotate to the next to fire position. Then you open the loading gate again, you unload the round, you visually and physically inspect each chamber, then you reapply the firearm safety device. The 1873 rule. The old single action army revolvers, this is very old, 1873. These revolvers had a design characteristic where if you drop the revolver, that firing pin could actually hit the round that's in the chamber lined up with the hammer, and it could fire. Same thing on horseback, same thing if someone bumps into that revolver or something like that. So if you are one of those owners of those original versions of the single action army revolvers, then it's advised that you leave that cylinder, that chamber under the hammer empty to make sure that if there's bumps or something like that, there's not going to be an accidental discharge. Not very common, but hey, some people collect old guns. All right, moving to semi-automatic pistols. Here we have a Glock 19 that we're going to use to demonstrate. Semi-automatic pistols have one chamber, right? So every time you fire, that chamber gets semi-automatically loaded with another round ready to fire. When you pull a trigger, that cartridge is going to get fired, the casing comes out, and then the hammer is going to get cocked again, and a new cartridge is going to be loaded. What does all of that mean? I'm going to load a couple dummy rounds. Into this semi-auto. All right, so dummy rounds right here. So with a semi-automatic like Glock, this is a striker fired pistol. We have a different video talking about what striker fired and hammer fired and all of that stuff is. But simply pulling the trigger is not going to do anything, kind of like the single action revolvers. I have to rack the slide to reset the trigger to be able to pull it. So when I load my magazine into this, there's only one chamber in here, and that's the chamber that the rounds keep going to. So when my slide is back, when the slide comes back, it ejects the round or the cartridge or the casing that was in the chamber. Right now, this was empty. That's why when I pulled the slide back, nothing came out of the gun. But when the slide goes forward, see what happens to the trigger. The trigger comes forward just a little bit. So the trigger is reset, and my gun and the slide has pushed one round into the chamber. Now, I did something incorrectly because I wanted to do it slowly so you can see. And what I did was when I racked the slide, I helped the slide going forward. Never ever do that. When you pull the slide back, let it go forward by itself. And we're going to do that from this point on. So now this firearm is ready to fire. So if I pull the trigger, firing pin is going to hit the primer on that cartridge. It's going to cause that explosion. Bullet's going to come out, and the slide is going to go back. So a slide goes back, it cocks the hammer again. You saw that round getting ejected. It's going to reset my trigger, and then the slide is going to go forward. So slide goes forward, loads the next round in, and so on and so forth. So then I can pull the trigger again, explosion, bullet comes out. This is going to get it. The used cartridge, the used casing is going to get ejected. Next round is going to get loaded, and so on and so forth. So each trigger pull is going to cause this whole cycle. The ammo is all held in a magazine, right? We just showed you this. So this is where all the ammo is. California has a limit of 10 rounds as a maximum capacity of what you can have in your firearm. So we have a magazine release button on the firearm. So if I put in the magazine, there's a magazine release button right here that releases this magazine and allows me to either put in a fresh magazine, reload my magazine or whatnot. And you may or may not have a manual safety. This firearm does not have a manual safety. Some firearms do have a manual safety. Keep in mind that manual safeties are not going to be foolproof. Manual safety is a mechanical device. It's an added layer of safety. It should never be relied upon as a primary method of safety. Manual releases are not foolproof. Also, keep in mind, if you have your gun on manual safety and you press the trigger and then you remove the safety, some guns will fire. So just because the gun is unsafe, please do not just pull the trigger. So here are some parts of a semi-automatic gun. Now, this gun that they have on the firearm study guide is a hammer-fired gun. We're using a striker-fired gun. So you can see at the back of this gun, there's no hammer. Here, there's an exposed hammer. So you have the slide, you have the slide lock. So we have a slide lock right here where I can rack the slide to the rear and push the slide lock up, and it'll lock the slide to the rear and keep the action open. And this is how you hand a firearm to someone else. So the magazine is removed. I rack the slide open and lock it to the rear. I physically and visually inspect that the gun is unloaded, and then I can hand it to someone else. Then this firearm has a mechanical safety, a manual safety. Red means it'll fire. If it's pointed down and it's covering the red, red means dead. So if you can see the red, that means that the gun is off of safety. Then we have the trigger and the trigger guard. We have the grip. Here's the magazine release button. We have the magazine release button here. You have the magazine, and then you can see the rounds inside the magazine as well. Safe handling demonstration with a semi-automatic pistol. Number one, you have to remove the magazine. So again, I don't think this is very accurate because the gun is going to be actually handed to you with the firearm safety device like so. So then you're gonna unlock, take this off, and now you can do your safe handling demonstration. So you could put an empty magazine in it, and then you can remove the magazine, but I would say that's a little bit redundant. So then you would get the magazine, you load one dummy round. I had 3 in here, so I removed 2. So you load one dummy round into the magazine. Then while maintaining muzzle awareness, you're gonna load that round. This is where most people fail their safe handling demonstration with a semi-automatic pistol, is as they're trying to load, they turn this toward the instructor or toward the gun dealer, and then they go to load the magazine. You just failed your safe handling demonstrations. So while maintaining that muzzle awareness and trigger discipline, you're going to load your magazine in there. You can either press the slide lock down, or you can pull the slide to the rear and let it go. That's up to you. So if I want to press the slide lock down, sends the slide forward, that round just got loaded into the chamber. Again, I have my trigger discipline. A lot of times here, as people are manipulating, that finger starts sliding onto the trigger, and then again, you will fail the safe handling demonstration. So now to unload the firearm, I'm going to press on the magazine release. Magazine comes out. Now I have one more round in the chamber that I need to worry about. So I'm going to rack the slide, and that round just came out. So I rack the slide to the rear, press the slide lock up, and keep that action open. Physically and visually inspect the chamber and the magazine well. Then I'm going to apply the firearm safety device, and now this is going to be rendered safe. So the way they have this in the firearm safety manual study guide is remove your magazine, you lock the slide back, or pull and hold back if you don't have a slide lock. Then you visually and physically inspect the chamber and the chamber to make sure it's empty. You remove the firearm safety device. Obviously, as we discussed, it has to be removed first because usually it comes with a cable lock. You load your dummy round into the magazine, insert your magazine, you chamber the round by releasing the slide, and then you remove the magazine, you inspect chamber, and you get the round out. Then you inspect the chamber and the magazine well to make sure there's no additional rounds in there. And then you basically apply the firearm safety device. Now, the one place where a lot of people make a mistake here when they go to unload a semi-automatic handgun is the first step. I'm going to put a couple more rounds in here just to demonstrate. So I put in my magazine, I load my handgun, I go bang, 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 I'm shooting, I'm having fun. Then I go to unload and they rack the slide. The first thing you want to do with a semi-automatic weapon when you want to unload, number one thing you have to do is to remove the ammunition source, which is this magazine. If I don't do that, and if I rack the slide and eject that round, what just happened? The slide going forward just loaded another round from my magazine in there. So now remove the magazine. I think I loaded the firearm, where in fact, there's another round in the chamber. So the first thing you do with a semi-automatic firearm is you remove the ammunition source. So you have to eject the magazine first. Then you take the round out of the chamber that's actively ready to be shot. And then you keep the action open and then you physically inspect. Is my chamber empty? Is the magazine well empty? They're all empty. I'm good to go. Again, it's important. So we're going to repeat this one more time. Don't assume your semi-automatic gun is unloaded just because you remove the magazine. You might have a cartridge in the chamber and ready to be fired. So that firearm is still not unloaded just because you remove the magazine. So point it in a safe direction, remove the magazine first, then check the chamber and make sure that both the chamber and the magazine well are empty. So this is absolutely important. Keep this in mind. Really important. So we're going to say it one more time. Don't assume a semi-automatic is unloaded just because the magazine is removed. Don't allow the slide to go forward unless you have removed the magazine and you've checked the chamber and the magazine well and you know both are empty. If you have a magazine in, that slide going forward is going to load one more round into the chamber. Check again, check, double check, triple check. Anytime you pick up a handgun, check it. Anytime you put the handgun back, check it. Anytime you want to hand the handgun to someone, then make sure it's unloaded. So we talked about this enough times. I hope that that you guys are going to remember this. So always remove the magazine first. Let's move on to long guns. We're going to start with a pump action shotgun first. Pump action shotguns, they have a barrel, they have an ejection port, they have a forend or a forearm, depending on what you want to call it, trigger and trigger guard. They may have a grip, they may have a pistol grip like this, or they may have a stock grip like what's in the picture here, and they have a stock. This particular shotgun has a collapsible stock. I like this for home defense because in home defense, I don't want my shotgun so far in front of me. I want it to be closer to me when I turn around corners and things like that. But that's besides the point. We're going to talk about how to load and unload a shotgun and do our safe handling demonstration. So a firearm safety device for a shotgun comes like so through the action, and that prevents me from closing the action and firing the gun because there's a cable in there. So it comes in like that. So the handling procedures for this, again, it's going to be remove your firearm safety device. And I need to go get a dummy round because I don't have a 12 gauge dummy round in here. So for a pump action shotgun, there's a couple ways you can load the shotgun. Number one is you grab the cartridge, or you can get the shot shell and orient it forward the right way. So this is the back of the shot shell, so that needs to be to the back. So you can just drop that into the chamber, into the action, and you can push the forend or the forearm forward and close the action, and that just chambered that round. So the other way to do this would be to have this closed. Then you put this round into the tube magazine right here and push that until it catches and it's not going to fall out. And then the way you would load that round is by pulling the forend back and then pushing it forward again. So there's a couple ways to do that. So we just did both. So we just loaded the round. Now we have to unload it. So I can't just simply pull this back. There's a little action release button right here that you have to press, and that releases the action and allows you, because everything is locked here, ready to be fired. So I have to press down on this action release and then pull out, pull this forend back, and that ejects the round. Now I can apply my firearm safety device like so, and I'm pretty much done. Before that, you want to visually inspect your chamber, and you want to inspect your tube magazine and make sure that they are empty. So my chamber is empty, and I can see my tube magazine follower here. That means there's no live round. If I see a primer or if I see the end of a round, that means that there's a live round in here. So now this shotgun has been unloaded. Here are the steps that are in the study guide. Again, it's going to be handed to you with the firearm safety device on it. You have to remove it and then go about it that way. Break top shotguns. So we don't have a break top shotgun here. We're gonna just go off the photos and we're gonna kind of demonstrate. But with break top shotguns, we have the barrel, we have the breech lock. The breech lock is basically what I'm gonna just demonstrate with a regular shotgun. But a break top shotgun or a break top long gun is one that breaks from the half. So you've seen those shotguns, those hunting shotguns, the double barrels, either over, under, or side by side, where this barrel just breaks open and it exposes the chamber. You can load rounds in it and then you close it back up. And the breech lock is going to be what you press on to actually open the breech. They may or may not have exposed hammers, stock, but trigger and trigger guard. I don't know where this gun is, but it's quite old. It seems like I've never seen this gun. Most break top long guns are going to be probably coach type shotguns and things like that. So you're going to open the breech, physically inspect each chamber. If there's one chamber or two chambers, then you're going to inspect every single chamber, make sure they're empty. Remove the firearm safety device. That's probably going to be a trigger guard because you can't use cable locks on breech top long guns. While maintaining muzzle awareness and trigger discipline, load a dummy round into the barrel. So you're going to put that directly in. You close the breech or close the action. Then you're going to again open the breech lock and break open the action. You're going to extract the round. Some competition shotguns actually eject the round by itself. So as soon as you break it, the round comes flying out, and then you're going to reapply the firearm safety device. Bolt action long guns. For bolt action, I don't have a bolt action long gun that I normally use. This is a relic that I have. This is a World War II gun. This is an Enfield, British Enfield MK2 that we're going to demonstrate with. But again, they have the same general characteristics. There's a barrel, trigger guard. There's a bolt that you operate to chamber rounds, and there's a stock. They may or may not have a magazine. This one does. The magazine may be removable or it may be fixed. That's all. There's different types of guns and how they operate. So the way you operate a bolt action is this bolt really wants to be released. So the bolt is locked. You're going to bring it up and pull it back, and that opens the action. Like the action, you're going to inspect the chamber. and make sure that there's nothing going on. If there's a fixed magazine, then you're going to actually look at the top of the magazine, make sure there's no rounds in the magazine. And so then you are going to remove the firearm safety device. It's probably going to be a trigger lock. So you're going to remove that. Then you're going to get one round, put it into the chamber. You're going to push the bolt forward and down, and that's going to lock it. Now comes unloading it. So the gun is ready to fire. So to unload, again, we're going to pull the bolt up and back. That's going to eject the round. Then we're going to physically and visually inspect the chamber and the magazine follower here to make sure there's no more rounds. And then we can either close the bolt or we can leave it open and then apply the firearm safety device like so. Lever action guns are very similar to bolt action guns in the sense that instead of just operating a lever, so usually there's a lever right here underneath the trigger guard. It's actually part of the trigger guard extended into a lever. So you swivel or pivot that forward and then back, and that operates the action. There's usually a loading port. There may or may not be an exposed hammer. You got the stock, you got the barrel, and you have a tube magazine. And each time you operate that lever forward, it opens the action, ejects the casing. When you pull that lever back into position, it closes the action and it loads another round from the tube magazine into the chamber ready to be fired. So this is where you load the rounds in through the tube magazine as well. So you are going to load one round in here, swivel forward, pull back, that round gets into the chamber, and then gun is ready to be fired. Then again, you open the lever forward, back, and that round comes out flying. Once that lever is forward, you're going to inspect the chamber to make sure it's empty. You're going to look into the tube magazine and physically look in there and make sure you see the magazine follower, and that shows you that the tube magazine is also empty, and then you can reapply the firearm safety device. There are some ammo considerations when it comes to rifles with tube magazines. Obviously with shot shells, the shot shells are going to be flat, so you don't really have anything to consider for a shotgun. But with rifles, a lot of rifle rounds have this pointy tip. So imagine having a few of these sitting in a tube magazine. If you drop the rifle or if you bump it, this is going to act as a firing pin for the round that's sitting in front of it, and it can activate, and suddenly you have an explosion in your magazine for all the rounds, and it's going to basically be a chain reaction that all of those rounds are going to explode. So you have to either use flat-nosed ammo or ammo that have rubber polymer tips. So keep in mind, flat nose, round nose, or hollow points that have flat tips, and it's not going to activate the primer on the cartridge. So that's some consideration. If you do consider buying a lever action, you have to invest in that kind of ammo. Now, semi-automatic long gun. When we talk about semi-automatic long guns, we're all thinking about AR-15s. That's probably the most popular gun in America. So I'm going to demonstrate with an AR-15. Yes, this is a California compliant AR-15. We don't use shark fin grips. We do other features to make sure that this is California compliant. All right, so AR-15 magazine, AR-15 dummy round. One of the things that you will notice with AR-15s or similar types of rifle magazines is, unlike the handgun magazines that have smaller cartridges, you don't have to put the round in the front and then push it to the rear. You can do that, but actually it's pretty simple. You simply put the round on top and then you press in, and that round is loaded into your magazine. So again, provided that the AR-15 is handed to you locked like so, you're going to remove the firearm safety device. Then you're going to physically and visually inspect the chamber and the magazine well to ensure your rifle is unloaded, then you're going to insert your magazine in here and slam that into place. Now you can either pull the charging handle back and let it go forward. So charging handle comes back all the way and you can let it go forward, or you can press on this bolt release right here and let the bolt go forward by itself. Either way, that round has just been loaded into the chamber. So this is loaded. Again, muzzle awareness throughout this whole process. Now, to unload, again, this is a semi-automatic, so I have to remove the magazine first. So again, with most California devices, it really depends on what configuration that rifle is. You might have a screw here that you have to unscrew to be able to remove the magazine instead of this button. This button is non-operational right now because this is a California compliant gun. We have what we call a Juggernaut Tactical Hellfighter kit, which means I have to press on this rear takedown button, and that just separated the upper and lower. Now I can press on this button to remove the magazine. So I've removed the magazine, I've removed the ammo source. Now I can press on, or now I can pull the charging handle to the rear, and that round just came ejected. I'm going to press on the bolt catch right here and lock that bolt to the rear. Now I'm going to physically and visually inspect the magazine and the chamber, make sure there's no live rounds, and then I'm going to reapply the firearm safety device, like so. Again, depending on what semi-automatic you have, it might go through a different process of loading and unloading. It's probably going to be somewhat the same as what we're talking about here. They have a looks like a Ruger type, like a Ruger Ranch type firearm. The charging handle here is on the side. The magazine is inserted in like here, and there's a magazine release lever. So again, it's going to be an iteration of what we just talked about. Nowadays, most of us are looking at AR-15s, so I wanted to demonstrate with a firearm that most of us use. Now, one thing that we also wanted to talk about is how to do safe handling demo with a semi-automatic shotgun. Here I have a Beretta AL-391 Eureka. It could be a 1301 Tactical or A300 Patrol, whatever the shotgun that you're considering. I just wanted to go over a semi-automatic shotgun for you as well. Similar to a pump action shotgun, it may come to you like so with the firearm safety device attached. It may also have a trigger lock depending on what kind of shotgun you purchase. But we're going to remove the firearm safety device. We're going to inspect the chamber and the tube magazine and make sure we see the magazine follower, and this shotgun is empty. The action is open. Now I'm going to get one round, put that into here, into the chamber, and then I'm going to press on the bolt release, and that's going to load that round into the shotgun ready to be fired. Now, if at this point, if I'm operating the shotgun and if I want to add additional rounds, there's the tube magazine right here, so I can add more rounds in here. For safe handling demonstration, all we need is one round. So now all I need is to pull the charging handle and that round comes out flying. And then I just lock the bolt open. And what I just did was, once I ejected that round, I pressed on this action release right here, and you heard that little click. So now once I pull the bolt back, it'll lock open. That's just a feature of Beretta firearms. Now the bolt is open, so now I can inspect visually and physically both the magazine, tube magazine, and the chamber and make sure it's empty. And now I can apply my firearm safety device again. The main point here is throughout this whole process, we want to practice firearm safety. That's most of the time where accidents happen, or when we're manipulating firearms and we're manipulating it unsafely. And manipulating the firearm, aside from being on the shooting range and shooting it, is loading and unloading, putting in the magazine and removing it, applying and removing the firearm safety device. So you have to make sure that your muzzle doesn't cover anything that doesn't need to be covered, and you are not putting your hand on, you're putting your finger on the trigger. Uh, this is probably the number one thing that I see at my dealership, is when someone comes in and they want to inspect the firearm, they want to check out the firearm, and I get the firearm, I remove the magazine, I leave the action open, I hand it to them, and the first thing that they do is they turn it towards me as they're looking at the firearm. And when I tell people, please point it in a safe direction, their first answer is, well, you just unloaded it. Number rule of firearm safety is treat all guns as if they're loaded. Never point your firearm at anything you don't intend to destroy. Those are the first two. So understand this, practice this, commit it to muscle memory. You need to be made uncomfortable if your gun is pointed at someone, just as a way of muscle memory and not actively thinking about it. Even with a training gun, I'm hesitant to point the gun at someone, because now it's come to a point where it's muscle memory. And if I'm holding something that resembles a gun, I don't want to point it at anyone. And that's the level of safety that we've gone from uh, an incompetent level to a level of unconscious competence. So the different levels of competence that you have to go through to get to an expert level is, at first, the person that comes in and I unlock the gun and I unload the gun and I hand it to them and they point it at me and they say, well, it's unloaded. That's what we call unconscious incompetence. So incompetence. So there's someone who doesn't know something and they're not aware that they don't know something. So then when I explain that, hey, you have to treat all guns as if they're loaded, I point them in the direction of posters that are on the wall about the 4 rules of firearm safety and things like that. And what I'm hoping that would happen at that point is that by reading these different things, they move from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. And they're being made aware that there are things in this realm that they don't know. And at that point, I'm hoping that that trigger, that light bulb goes off in their head, that they need to go and get more training. So at that unconscious incompetence, at that conscious incompetence, so now you know that there are things that you don't know and you need to go seek training to learn more about it. Once we go and take training, we move from conscious incompetence to conscious competence. So now there's things that we know, but we need to be consciously thinking about it to be able to practice it. So when I first understand the rule of firearm safety, it's not going to be muscle memory. I have to consciously think about it to make sure, okay, I don't want to point my gun. I want to make sure my finger is off the trigger and all of those good stuff. And then at some point, with increased practice, so you take training to learn, then you practice to commit that to muscle memory. So at that point, with enough practice, now it gets committed to muscle memory. So you move to unconscious competence. So you're competent about something to the point where you no longer have to think about it. Think about what happens when you first learned driving. You first took classes and stuff, and they taught you this is how a car operates, this is how you move the car from neutral into drive and all of that stuff. And then once you learned that, then you sat behind the wheel and you had to consciously think about, okay, where's the gas, where's the brake, where's the steering wheel, this is what I need to do. And you had to think about every single thing, and you had to drive really slow, and you were overwhelmed with all the things that you have to do. But then now you just sit in your car, you put it in drive, and you just go without thinking about it. So you've already moved to unconscious competence with driving, and you have to go to the same level when it comes to working with guns. A lot of times what happens is people, they've done something incorrectly so many times that now they think that's the right way of doing things. So please take training with certified instructors. Go to a2defensetraining.com. We have an array of courses from very, very extremely beginner all the way to extremely advanced. And make sure you take training so that you can operate your firearms safely and competently. That's all I want to say about that. All right, let's talk about ammunition a little bit. What most people usually refer to as a bullet is actually a cartridge. So a cartridge is a composition of four different things that are put together, a bullet being one of them. So the tip of a cartridge, the part that comes out of the pointy end of your gun, that's the bullet. So all of these are going to be put together by this casing, which is the biggest part of a cartridge that holds everything together. So the casing holds the gunpowder within it. It holds the bullet at the tip. It holds the primer on the back. So the primer is where your firing pin strikes, and that creates a spark that ignites all the gunpowder inside the casing. That explosion, that gas, that rapidly expanding gas is going to push this bullet out through the barrel and out through the muzzle. And then if you have a semi-automatic, some of that gas is going to cycle your gun again and reset it for the next trigger press as well. Ammunition is absolutely important when it comes to understanding what ammunition you fire from what firearm. We just talked about the physics of gunfire. When it comes to a firearm, each firearm is going to have its own properly marked caliber of ammunition that can work in that firearm. And that's usually written on the firearm. On most semi-automatics, it's either on the chamber, on the action, or on the slide. So in this one, it's on both. So right here, it says 9x19. 9x19, that's also known as a 9mm or a 9mm Luger, 9mm Parabellum, 9mm by 19. All of those are interchangeable with one another. On some firearms, it may be printed elsewhere, like on this revolver, it's on the barrel itself. It says 38 Smith & Wesson or 38 Special, and that's the ammo that's appropriate for that firearm. Here we have a 357 Magnum revolver, and then if you look at the packaging on the ammunition, it also prints the same on the packaging. So you need to match what's on the packaging with what's on your firearm and only fire what's appropriate for your firearm. This semi-automatic is chambered in 9mm, and you can see it says 9mm Parabellum. Same thing as a 9mm Luger. Those terms are interchangeable. Can you fire a cartridge that fits your firearm? Absolutely not. You can never just put a cartridge in your firearm and see if it fits and then pull the trigger, because that can lead to a catastrophe. For example, 357 Magnum also fits in some 38 Special revolvers, but you can't fire a 357 Magnum round out of a revolver that's chambered only in 38 Special. Old ammo, dirty ammo, ammo that has corrosions on it, ammo that's wet, ammo that you cannot identify, those are going to be absolutely dangerous to fire. Please just discard those properly. You can't toss ammo in the trash. You can't take ammo to your hazardous waste disposal center in your community. Most ammo needs to be taken to a police station or a similar place. It's a if you call your local police station, they'll tell you where to take it. But most police stations will take ammo and they'll discard it there. There are ammo that's illegal in the state of California. For example, 50 BMG or 50 big BMG stands for big machine gun, and that caliber is illegal in the state of California to fire. So if you want to buy ammunition, make sure that you go to a licensed ammunition vendor so that they can educate you and they can sell you ammo that's legal and appropriate for your gun. If you have any questions, again, put your questions in the comment section. We want to make sure you're safe. We want to make sure you're using things that are legal and appropriate for your specific purpose. You have to also understand what's the dangerous range of your ammunition. You have to understand how far can that bullet travel. If a bullet is moving through the air, it's absolutely dangerous. Most ammunition can go up to a mile. Most ammunition. Some ammunitions can go 2 miles. So you have to understand with the rounds that you're firing how far they can travel, because then they can actually damage things that are in that range. Just because you have a target that's 25 yards, 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards from you, and you're firing at that target, doesn't mean that's where the bullet stops. So you need to understand the dangerous range and make sure you have a proper backstop that can stop that ammunition from going further. You have to also understand your bullet penetration. Different types of rounds penetrate differently. So we already talked about it, that inside a house, bullets can go through walls, doors, windows. Drywall absolutely does not stop a bullet. There are bullets that penetrate less. For example, hollow points ammo are made so that they mushroom upon impact, so they penetrate less. Does that mean they never penetrate and over penetrate a drywall? No, that does not mean that. But they're made so that they put more of their energy on their target and not penetrate as much as ballpoint ammo. So again, we have a video actually that goes through different kinds of ammunition. I'll put the link on the top right so that you can actually go and watch that video. It goes into it in a little bit more detail. But again, if you have any questions, drop it in the comment section, contact us. We're happy to answer any questions you might have. Once you fire a round, you cannot take it back. You're responsible for every bullet you fire until it comes to a full stop. If it hits anything, you are going to be responsible for any damages, any injuries that your bullet causes. So I was under attack and I fired at someone and I missed and hit an innocent bystander. My intentions were good. Those are not going to give you any kind of legal coverage. You are responsible if you miss your target and if you hit someone who you shouldn't have hit, if you damage something that you should not have damaged. In terms of malfunctions, so ammunitions can malfunction. You have to understand the types of malfunctions that are ammo related, and you should be able to clear those malfunctions as well. Again, if you're not familiar with those, I highly urge you to go to a2defensetraining.com and take classes so that you can practice firearm safety. You can understand what to do. But with most malfunctions, stop firing immediately. You have to keep your gun pointed in a safe direction for at least 30 seconds to a minute. It says 10 seconds, but it's 30 seconds to a minute, and then seek competent help if you cannot clear that malfunction yourself safely. Here's a test just to test your knowledge of what we just talked about. Again, feel free to pause this. I'm going to go through the questions and answers, but pause and answer them yourself, and then we can continue playing and see if you got them right. The page numbers are where you can find these answers in the Firearm Safety Certificate study guide. The importance of the dangerous range is that a bullet can travel far beyond the intended target. That's true. Number two, the safety on a semi-automatic pistol is not foolproof. That's also true. Number three, just because a cartridge fits into your firearm does not necessarily mean it is safe to shoot. Absolutely true. Number four, in the case of a malfunction, you should A, keep your finger on the trigger, B, immediately drop the firearm, C, try and determine where the malfunction is, D, keep the firearm pointed in a safe direction, and the correct answer is D. Number five, after ensuring a double action revolver is pointed in a safe direction and with your finger off the trigger, you begin unloading the firearm by A, opening the cylinder, B, locking the slide back, revolvers don't have a slide, C, opening the loading gate, double action revolvers don't have loading gates, D, pushing the magazine release, double action revolvers or any revolver doesn't have a magazine release. So the correct answer is A, you open the cylinder, then you start unloading the revolver. Number six, firearm or ammunition caliber refers to A, barrel length, B, magazine capacity, C, barrel or bullet diameter, D, bullet velocity. And the correct answer is C, barrel or bullet diameter. Seven, a magazine is a part of A, single action revolver, B, double action revolver, C, semi-automatic pistol, D, single action and a double action revolver. A magazine is a part of a C, semi-automatic pistol. It can also be a part of a semi-automatic rifle, but we don't have the rifle here. So the correct answer is C. All right, now we're going to talk about firearm ownership. So Firearms must be handled responsibly. We talked about that. They must be stored securely. There's fines and imprisonment if those are not done correctly. You can go to the Office of Attorney General and learn more about the laws. If you want to read the legalese, you can go absolutely there and learn more about it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an attorney. So when you get a firearm, read all of your instruction manuals. Get training on that specific firearm and get to learn that specific firearm and make sure you know the ins and outs of it. I always talk about how being able to maintain your firearm, take your firearm apart, clean it, put it back together. That gives you more understanding of how that firearm operates. Look at the YouTube videos that we have for your specific firearm. We have them for most firearms now, and learn about how that firearm functions. And by doing that, number one, you maintain your firearm, you increase the longevity of your firearm, and you make sure that it's in good working condition. And number two, as you're taking it apart and putting it together, you will notice if there's something going on in that firearm, if there's a malfunction, if there are parts that are corroding, that are eroding, that need replacement, you will catch those before they lead to an unintended consequence. Enroll in training courses, learn from certified instructors. Don't assume that you know what you need to do because you go to a shooting range with a bunch of buddies, because you have watched movies. John Wick is not firearm safety. John Wick is not how we do firearms. So what you see on TV, but you may hear from your buddies. A lot of times I get this from people that I encourage to come and take training classes that, oh, I go out and shoot with my buddies out in the desert all the time. And then sure enough, they have bad habits that they formed that now it's going to be so much harder to break because they've instilled those bad habits, and those bad habits have become unconscious, quote unquote, competence. It's actually unconscious incompetence that they've instilled in themselves. They've developed the wrong muscle memories. So now we have to break through those and put a good muscle memory in place of those. So don't just assume just because someone has had guns all their life that they're doing things correctly. We see that all the time where there are incorrect things being done because someone has never had training and has relied on the wrong sources to get training on firearms. This is not an area where you want to cheap out. Maintain your firearms. We talked about that. It increases your longevity of your firearms. It keeps them in good working condition. It keeps them reliable. And then during that process of maintaining your firearm, you will also notice if there's things that need replacement, if there are parts that are not working as intended, and you can catch those. Cleaning and cleaning is one part of it. Cleaning is usually the first area where you start to realize what's going on and what might need more service, and then you can send it for repair. If you're knowledgeable enough, certain things you can repair yourself. Certain things need to go out to a licensed gunsmith. And again, please take training. I cannot emphasize this more. At a2defensetraining.com, we have online training that you can participate in, and we go through kind of the same processes we're going now. Actually, with most of our firearm training, we have this part of it that's included as part of your training, where if you go out to the range and you take a video of yourself performing, you can send that video to us. You can send us images of your targets and your shot groupings, and we can provide you feedback absolutely free of charge. And we can tell you things, we can give you feedback that then you can start to build upon. So that online training is available for anyone. It's extremely cheap. If you think about it, you have that training. Once you enroll in it, you have lifetime access to that training. So you can review it. We update it all the time. And also take in-person training. It's really valuable to take training with a licensed certified instructor in person. If you're in the Southern California area, please come to us. We have classes almost every single day. So please take classes, come to A2 Defense Training, or go to any instructor that you trust and you know that they're certified and you know that they're teaching the right things. But do not rely on word of mouth. Do not rely on the next door neighbor, because you don't know if they are doing the right things or not. Just because someone owns guns and hasn't had an accident yet doesn't mean that they're doing the right thing. Safety and storage devices, absolutely important. We already talked about some of those when we were talking about doing the safe handling demonstrations, but basically there are two different types of storage devices and safety devices. There's one type where it prevents an unauthorized user from actually using the firearm. So that's a safety device. So if someone lays their hand on that gun, they're not able to load it, they're not able to fire it. So it will not prevent someone accessing it, it only prevents them from using it. A storage device is a lockbox, like a gun safe, a vault, or something, which will completely prevent someone from accessing that firearm. Nothing is ever going to keep a gun safe indefinitely. At some point, someone who's determined enough is going to be able to drill a safe and open it up. But there's levels that we can go through, and there's layers of safety that we can build. So it's recommended that you use both a safe storage device and a safety device in conjunction. So keeping your gun unloaded, putting a safety device like a trigger lock or a cable lock on it, and then putting it in a safe. That way, if one is disabled, the other one is going to still be effective. And storing the gun separate from ammunition is going to be also a good idea for the guns that are not being used for home defense or for your active self-defense. So all of these devices are going to be as good as the precautions that you take to actually, number one, use them, and number two, keep them secure. So if everybody in the household knows the safe combination to my gun safe, then that's no longer really a safety device. Now, very important to note, effective January 1st, 2026, there's a new California law that it will require you, if you own a firearm in your residence, you have to ensure that your firearm is stored using a DOJ-approved firearm safety device or a DOJ-approved safe at all times, that it's not being carried, or if it's not in a close proximity to you so that you can actively prevent safe access, it has to be secured with a firearm safety device, or it has to be in a gun safe. So this is going to be fines and or misdemeanor penalties. Childproofing, to make sure that you're childproofing your house. Again, none of these are going to be 100%. You have to practice gun safety, and you have to always actively think about where are your kids and where are your guns. So the gun needs to be stored unloaded. You have to use an FSD, a firearm safety device, like a safety cable lock or a trigger lock, in conjunction with a gun safe. So it's unloaded, I have the trigger lock and I have the cable lock, and then I put it in a gun safe. And then I have the ammo stored in another locked container separate from the guns. So if by some miracle one of them is open and someone accesses it, my child accesses one, they don't have access to the other to cause a catastrophe. So it's also important where you store these different things. Is that storage location accessible to kids? Is it just in a closet that, during the course of the day, the kid can go out and start playing with your gun safe? Or is the safe also stored in a location that's inaccessible to kids? So that's a third layer of safety that you can think about. So you don't want to store your guns where it's visible. You don't want to put it on top of a shelf. You don't want to put it on kitchen counters. Kids can climb, kids can get into things. And you don't want to store it on a bedside table. It's not going to be under the mattress or a pillow. It's not going to be on a closet shelf. Don't store it among other valuables like jewelry, unless all of those are locked in a secured container. I would advise against locking those with your jewelry and all those other stuff, because accessing one means accessing another. And I like to put additional layers of safety where if I'm going for jewelry, I'm only going for jewelry. If I'm going for a gun, I'm only going for a gun. That's the only thing that's going to become accessible. And again, make sure that location is not accessible to children. So it should be in a place that they can't normally go to. It's usually that door access to that place is going to be locked as well. And then if you have non-defensive firearms, things that you don't actively use them for home safety, consider putting those in a different location, putting them, store them away from home. If you have a storage space, if you have somewhere where you can store your firearms away from home, do so. more guns means more chances of things going wrong. So if something is not actively used for your defense, store them where your kids and your family are not going to be around. So let's go over this chapter's test. Again, feel free to pause, answer, and then play from this point on. Question number 1, it is important to carefully read all instruction material you receive with your firearm. That's true. Number 2, certain modifications when made to a firearm may void its warranty. That is true. Number 3, it is safe to store a loaded firearm in your bedside table. That is false. Number 4, 2 common firearm safety devices are trigger locks and cable locks. That is true. Number 5, which of the following steps should be taken to child-proof your firearm? A, use a firearm safety device and store the firearm in a locked container. That's one of them. B, always store your firearm unloaded. Yes. C, store ammunition separately in a locked container. Yes. So the correct answer is D, all of the above. All right. So now we're going to talk about firearm transfers and purchases. So prohibited firearm transfers and straw purchases. So that's basically transferring a firearm to someone who should not have a firearm transferred to them. And a straw purchase is basically buying a gun for someone else without that person going through the proper paperwork and background checks and all that stuff. Rule of thumb is don't buy for the other guy. Straw purchase is a state crime and is a federal crime. If you buy a gun for the purpose of getting it for someone else who that person doesn't want to go and complete paperwork and everything, that's considered a straw purchase. You can go to prison for a long time and you will be fined a whole lot of money. So it's absolutely not worth doing. It's unlawful in California for anyone other than a California licensed dealer. So a California firearm dealer, or a CFD, is the only person in California who is authorized to transfer firearms from someone to an unlicensed person. So if you are not a licensed firearm dealer, you have to go to a firearm dealer, such as myself, to transfer the gun from one person or a shop to yourself. Otherwise, that's a felony. And again, it's both a state crime and it's a federal crime. It's against federal law to make false statements on an application to purchase a firearm. When you come to a firearm dealer, there's a Form 4473, which is an ATF form, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau. One of the main questions that's asked several times on that form is, are you buying this gun for yourself or are you buying it for the purpose of giving it to someone else? So if you've done a straw purchase, then you've lied on that application, and it's against federal law. So you've committed perjury in addition to the felony that you're going to be committing that straw purchase. It's also against federal law to transfer a firearm to someone who's prohibited to own or possess firearms. We're going to go over who is a prohibited possessor in just a little bit, but if someone is a prohibited possessor and you transfer a firearm to that person, then you've committed federal crime. And that's punishable by $250,000 fine and 15 years in federal prison, on top of what you might be responsible for the state crimes. So all of these get added on to get to each other. It used to be 10 years. They've increased it to 15 years. The $250,000, $250,000 fine, 15 years in prison. I think that makes it really not worth even trying or thinking about. Again, we probably said that this is probably the third time that we're saying this, but it's absolutely important. If you buy a gun and give it to a prohibited person, you're going to be committing state and federal crimes, and those get added on top of one another. Knowing the law is your responsibility. If the law changes the day after we post this video, it's your responsibility to know the law. There are people that come to me and says, oh, well, you didn't tell me this and that. And I outright tell them, maybe you should consider not owning a gun, because if you own a gun and you are committing a crime and then you say, oh, well, Ray didn't tell me this is the law, that's not going to give you any kind of legal coverage just because it wasn't included in your training class or it wasn't included in a YouTube video. you have to take responsibility to know what the law says. You have to know the federal law, state law, and local law. Those are all different levels. Federal law is overarching for everybody. Then state may or may not restrict a little bit more. And then there's local laws. Know what the laws are. Take an active role in making sure that you're kept abreast of everything that goes on around you. The state of California has a particular focus on handguns, understandably, because handguns are where a lot of crimes are committed using handguns. Handguns are the most number of firearms stolen out of cars that are unlocked. Handguns are the most number of things that are not stored securely, so they end up in a lot of different things. Does it mean long guns are not important? No, it does not, but handguns are where we see most of the statistics that happen around handguns. So again, I'm not a lawyer. This is not an individual guidance for each legal situation. Please seek professional advice if you have any specific situations that you need answers to. If you have questions, put it in the comment section. I'll try to answer to the best of my ability, but please understand I'm not a lawyer, so don't take it as legal advice. So we already talked about this. A California licensed dealer or a California firearm dealer or a CFD is the only person in California who is allowed to do retail sales of firearms or transfer ownership of firearms. The serial number on your firearm is like the license plate of your car. When you're in the state of California, there's a database of who owns what guns, and all of those guns are registered to you. If later that gun ends up somewhere in a crime or something, it's going to get tracked back to you. So you have the legal responsibility to make sure that gun is transferred out of your possession in that registry, and that's by going to someone like myself and filling out paperwork for it to make sure that you're no longer responsible for that gun and that gun has properly been transferred to the right person, and that person goes through the same legal process to make sure that they're not a prohibited possessor and they're authorized to own a gun. So by doing this, you're getting yourself a lot of legal coverage that you are basically no longer responsible. That person has gone through background checks. That person has gone through all the scrutiny that you went through when you were purchasing a gun. They went through the 10-day wait. They did the background check. They signed the form. They did all of those ATF forms and the California dealer record of sales forms and all that stuff to make sure that they're not a prohibited possessor. When you do a sale and transfer, where you come to a firearm dealer, you have to have your personal ID information. You have to fill out what's called a dealer record of sale. That's now completely digital. So the dealer fills it out. You have to answer certain questions that are on that form. Then they print it out. Then you sign it, you put your right thumbprint on it. And then there's a 10-day waiting period. So you go pay for your gun, you pay for the paperwork, and then that gun gets set aside for you. There's a 10-day wait. Then the California Department of Justice will, after 10 days, will tell that dealer yay or nay. This person is not a prohibited possessor. Go ahead and transfer the gun, or no, don't transfer the gun because there's something in this person's background that prohibits them from owning firearms. So if you're not a dealer, you can't sell or transfer to another non-dealer or an unlicensed person. You can sell your gun to a dealer, or if you want to transfer it to a private party, you have to come to a dealer and do a private party transfer or a PPT. A private party transfer, same thing. You go to a dealer with the person that you want to sell your gun to or transfer the gun to, and then same thing, the dealer will get your ID and that person's ID, and they'll fill out that dealer's record of sale. It gets transferred to California Department of Justice. The dealer keeps possession of that firearm that you want to transfer for 10 days. And then once the Department of Justice gives their thumbs up, then that person can come and pick up the gun. The only transfer exception that doesn't have to go to a dealer is a transfer between immediate family. And it's very important to understand what immediate family means when it comes to firearms, because it doesn't mean brother or sister. It doesn't mean uncle or aunt. It only means parent to child, child to parent, grandparent to grandchild, grandchild to grandparent. It's only those that are considered immediate family. So your mom and dad, if you want to give a gun to your dad, all you do is you go online and you fill out an application, or you can print it out and mail it in if you would like to do that. Only those four are going to be considered an intra-familial transfer and you don't have to go to a gun dealer. You have to submit that report to the DOJ. You can Google this, BOF, Bureau of Firearms, BOF form 4544A is the form that you can either print and fill it out, you send it in, or you can go to the California Firearm Application Reporting System, CFARS, CFARS, and you can fill out an electronic form and you don't have to mail it in anymore. And here's the link to both of them. Now, the transferee must have an FSC. All right, so firearm purchasers or firearm owners must be 21. It used to be 18, then handguns were 21, long guns were 18, and then now everybody needs to be 21 years of age. You have to be a California resident. If you want to buy a gun in California, or you want to have guns in California, you have to be a California resident. That's actually not just a California law. If you want to buy in any state, you have to have a driver license of that state. And you can only have the driver license of one state legally. You can't have driver licenses in multiple states. So the state that you have your primary residence is the state that you have the driver's license in. That's the place where you can buy guns from and where you can get guns transferred to you. Otherwise, you can't go to another state and just get a gun. So in California, you have to have proof of residency. The address on your driver's license can be one form of proof of residency, and then you have to have something more. It can be a utility bill, it can be a car registration, something like that. The utility bill needs to be within 3 months. It can be a residential lease. It can be a property deed. It can be your military orders or permanent duty station. And the address that's on your DROS must match your proof of residency or your driver's license and ID. You also have to have a proof of legal residence in the United States. If your California driver's license is a real ID, that's proof of your legal residence in the United States. Otherwise, you have to have something else that shows your proof of legal presence in the United States. It can be a green card, it can be a passport, whatever the case might be. For firearm safety certificate, it has to be done in person. You have to have a passing grade of 75% on that test. The card is going to be valid for 5 years, and then you have to renew. It has to be done in the presence of a DOJ certified instructor, such as myself. Again, usually there's one at every dealer. There's a $25 fee associated with that, and there's some exemptions to that. So if a firearm is being returned to their owner, like a pawn shop return, then you don't have to have an FSC. The other thing is, if you are a concealed carry weapon permit holder, then you don't have to have a firearm safety certificate. Your concealed carry weapon permit is your exemption from having an FSC. If your firearm safety certificate is lost or stolen, you can go back to the same instructor that issued that to you, and you can get a replacement for $5 with your proof of identity. Safe handling demonstration. So prior to getting delivery of any firearm, you have to do a safe handling demonstration. And there's a safe handling demonstration form that the dealer signs, the firearm instructor signs, and you sign. That same firearm that's being purchased and the locking device that's coming with that firearm need to be the ones that you do the safe handling demo with. So it gets handed to you with the firearm safety device on it. You take it off, you do the safe handling demonstration, you apply the firearm safety device on it again, and that's pretty much it. A DOJ certified instructor has to be there to watch you. Again, the exceptions are pawn returns and intrafamilial transfers. A firearm safety device is required for any gun sale in the state of California. Those firearm safety devices must be DOJ approved. There's a firearm safety device or FSD certified list that you can go to, and you can see the list of all the safety devices that state of California has certified. The link is right there on the screen for you if you would like to go and examine that. But most guns that you purchase in California come with them. If for any reason there is not one included, then you're required to either purchase one from the dealer, or you have to sign an affidavit that you have a safety device at home and you have to put in the make and model and all that stuff on it, or you have a gun safe that meets those requirements. So those are the prevailing methods that guns are sold in California, but it's required to have available a firearm safety device. Either it comes with the firearm or you have to sign the affidavit that you have one. Again, exceptions are pawn returns and intrafamilial transfers. To buy a handgun in the state of California, if you're buying a new handgun, it has to be a handgun that's on the roster of handguns certified for sale. And here's the link of where you can go to examine that list. So if you're considering a specific manufacturer or a brand, you go on the Office of Attorney General website and you put in that manufacturer and you see what's available from that manufacturer in the state of California. And that list can change. Now, once you have a gun in the state of California that's legally owned privately, then you can transfer that from one person to another. All sales must include a DOJ-approved FSD. We already talked about that. Here's the link to see if your firearm safety device is on the roster. Talked about signing that affidavit. And here's a little cheat sheet that you can look at to see what you need for every different type of transfers. Now, keep in mind, this is a state requirement. There might be some cases where the state doesn't require it, but then federal law does require something else. If you're a new California resident, if you come to California with the intention of establishing residency, then you can bring your guns from wherever you're moving from to California. You're required to report those firearms to the state within 60 days, or you have to sell or transfer them. That's actually one of the ways that you can have an off-roster gun is if you're the resident of another state and you move to California and you want to bring that off-roster handgun to California, you can do so. That's a one-time exception that they have for you. There's a new resident firearm ownership report and a $19 fee that you do that. You can either do the paper application or you can go online and print those. There are also strict regulations for privately manufactured firearms in the state of California. To privately manufacture a firearm, you first must be eligible to own or possess firearms. So if you're a prohibited possessor, you can't be manufacturing firearms privately. Once you manufacture that firearm, then you have to apply for a unique serial number through the CFARS portal. And there's a unique serial number application that you fill out, and you get a unique serial number that needs to be on that firearm. And you are limited to no more than 3 manufactured firearms per calendar year unless you're a licensed firearm manufacturer. Sale or transfer of ownership of those manufactured firearms are prohibited with certain exceptions. You can also not manufacture assault weapons. Again, you have to go and read the definition of what an assault weapon is. It comes to the state of California. You also cannot manufacture machine guns. So fully automatic guns are basically what we call machine guns. There's a link for you if you want to get more information on it on the Office of Attorney General website. And this brings us to carrying a concealed weapon. So carrying a concealed weapon in the state of California is generally illegal, whether it's loaded or not. A CCW permit is generally issued for a handgun. When you do have a CCW, then that CCW permit lists the specific guns and the specific serial numbers that you're permitted to carry with you. But without that permit, you can't carry it on you, on your person. It can be in your vehicle. It can't be carried concealed. It can be transported, and we're going to talk about how you can legally transfer a firearm. But if it's loaded or unloaded and you just throw it in your glove compartment or you're concealing it somewhere in your vehicle, that's against the law. Without that permit, it needs to be locked in the trunk of a vehicle if your trunk is a separate compartment. So some SUVs, you can actually reach into the trunk from the cabin of the car. That's not considered a locked trunk. But if most sedans are like that, where the trunk is a separate compartment. So if you lock your gun in your trunk or you lock it in a locked container inside the cabin of your vehicle, then that's considered legal transport of the gun. It needs to be in a locked container carried directly to or from a motor vehicle, and then it needs to be going to and from a shooting range or a gunsmith or somewhere where you are going to be taking that gun legally. The exceptions are licensed hunters and fishermen while hunting and fishing. But other than that, if you're transferring something to and from a hunting expedition, then again, it needs to be locked. There are some occupational exceptions as well. If you're an authorized employee while engaged in specific activities, and you can look at Penal Code 25630 and 25640 for those specific exceptions. If you do want to get a license to carry a concealed weapon, then you have to apply either with the sheriff of your county that you reside in, or with the chief of police of the city that you live in, and or head of law enforcement agency of your location. And certain counties that have a population of less than 200,000, you may get an exposed carry license, and that exposed carry only allows you to carry in that county only. With a CCW permit, you get it from the sheriff of your county, but it allows you to carry across the state of California. With the exposed carry, it's for only in that county. A2 Firearms is licensed for Riverside County Sheriff. We also do training for LA County, San Diego, San Bernardino, and Orange County. So if you are in one of those counties, the process involves applying with the sheriff or the head of law enforcement agency. In the counties that I just listed, those you go to the sheriff's website, you apply for the CCW, then you come and take the training, and the certificate that we give you, you send that back to the sheriff. They do background check and live scan. There's an interview, there's reference check. That's all. It's a simple application. It's simple enough. But once that's all done, then they issue you that permit. You also have to list all the firearms that you want to include on your permit. Your permit has, on the back of it, it has the name, model, and serial number of every firearm that you are permitted to carry. You also have to do a shooting qualification with each of the firearms that you want to carry, and we do that shooting qualification as part of that training as well. For an initial CCW permit, it's a 16-hour course. So it's a 2-day course. That's a state requirement. It's not something that we came up with. And then that permit is good for 2 years. For the renewal, you have to only take an 8-hour course. Again, we talked about it. The license is valid throughout the state. There's this thing called reciprocity, where if you have the CCW permit for one state, it may be honored in another state. California doesn't have that. California doesn't recognize any other state's CCW permit. Now, they are allowing non-residents to apply for a California CCW. So if you're a resident of Arizona, if in the next 12 months, you're planning to visit somewhere in California, you can apply with the sheriff of that county and get a non-resident CCW permit. It's generally illegal to carry aboard any common carriers, any airlines. It's federally prohibited, and there's state prohibitions as well. There are places that you can possess loaded or unloaded guns, and those are your residence, your temporary residence, your campsite, your private property that you own or it's lawfully controlled by you. So if you're renting a place, if you're in your office, or any private property that you are in control of, you can have your gun loaded or unloaded, and it doesn't need to be concealed. It can be exposed. It can be whatever you want to do in those places, provided that it's not otherwise against the law to have a gun. So for example, at your campsite, you can have your gun, provided that your campsite is not in a place that having guns are going to be against the law. So for example, in California national parks, you can't have guns there. So if you have a gun in your campsite, then now you're in violation. Now we're going to go to use of lethal force in self-defense. You are authorized to use lethal force in self-defense if it's in defense of life and body and resisting death or great bodily harm. So that's really the rule of thumb. You can do that in defense of your habitation, your property, or your person from a violent felony or violent intrusion. Again, violent being the key word here. So death or great bodily harm need to be imminent. You can also use lethal force in defense of not just yourself, but family or a third party as long as those same rules apply, that death or great bodily harm is there. Apprehending a felon, suppressing a riot. I don't know if I would want to risk my life in those different situations. Usually when it comes to self-defense, we talk about breaking contact. As a private citizen, law enforcement usually makes contact and goes towards these people. You know, you may find yourself in a situation where you absolutely have to apprehend a felon or suppress a riot, and the state of California does authorize you to use lethal force in those situations. There are limitations on the use of force. So where you're initially justified to use lethal force during an attack, once there's no further danger, your use of force authorization will cease. So you can't keep using force if someone initially attacked you, and then once you render that attacker incapable of inflicting further injuries. So if they're running away, if they've dropped their gun, if they're down on the ground, no longer capable of attacking you, you have to stop. Otherwise, at that point, then you might be considered the attacker, and then the right of self-defense would be applicable to that person. The amount of force that you use need to be reasonable. And that reasonable test is basically a reasonable person in the same or similar circumstances. And the question is going to be asked that what would a reasonable person in that same or similar circumstances would do. If you use excessive force, if someone comes to you with ordinary force and you respond with lethal force, that's considered excessive force. If you are using force and someone is running away and they've ceased attacking you, and then now you're continuing to use that force, then that's called excessive force. So this is directly from the study guide. The right of self-defense is not initially available to a person who assaults another. So if someone is assaulting you, they can't claim self-defense when you use force to stop them. But if that person attempts to stop further combat and they inform you that they no longer want to attack you, so desire for peace, but then you still continue to fight, then the right of self-defense returns to that person who was initially the attacker, and it's going to be the same as the right of any other person being assaulted. So now you're actually assaulting them. Loaded firearms in public. It's illegal to carry on your person or in vehicle in an incorporated city or in prohibited areas of unincorporated territory. It's illegal for the driver or owner of a motor vehicle to permit carrying loaded firearms in their vehicle. So if someone else is carrying in your car with your knowledge, you're also going to be in legal trouble. Peace officers are authorized to examine firearms. If you refuse, it's going to be grounds for arrest. There are exceptions to this. If you are a hunter while you are on authorized hunting grounds and shooting ranges, that's going to be an exception. You can carry your loaded firearm. If you're an authorized employee, you can have a loaded firearm, but that's mostly on private property, in business property where you are otherwise authorized to have firearms. Large capacity magazines. Any magazine over 10 rounds in California is considered large capacity magazines. It's against the law to manufacture them, offer them for sale, give them to somebody, lend them to somebody, buy them, receive them. There's a couple of penal codes that go through all of those. So keep in mind, any firearm you buy in the state of California usually comes with 10-round magazines. If they don't come with 10-round magazines, the dealer cannot give you those magazines. If you are a prohibited possessor, you can transfer your firearms that are in your possession or legally owned by you to a licensed dealer, as long as there's a specific ascertainable expiration date to when your prohibited possession restrictions would end. So if there's an end date to that, so for example, someone who has had a violent felony, you're banned for life. So there's no end date to that. So you can't just go to a dealer and temporarily transfer your firearms to that dealer. But if there's an end date to your legal prohibition, then you can transfer them to a licensed dealer, and then you can get them back once that prohibition ends. Some miscellaneous prohibited acts. You can't obliterate or alter your firearm identifications. So serial numbers, brands, make, model, all that stuff that are printed on your gun, it's against the law to obliterate or alter any of those. If you openly carry an unloaded handgun on your person or in vehicle, again, we talked about it, the law doesn't really distinguish an unloaded handgun from a loaded handgun. You can't just open carry a gun whether it's loaded or not. On a public place or a public street in incorporated city and or county, or if it's in a prohibited area of an unincorporated place, city, county, or if it's a public place in a prohibited area of a city or county. Another really important one is unauthorized possession on school grounds. Basically, the only people who are allowed to carry firearms on school grounds are law enforcement officers that are assigned to that school. So technically, a law enforcement officer that's not assigned to a school can also not carry their firearms onto the school ground. But regardless of what kind of permitting you have, CCW, whatever the case is, you cannot carry firearms to schools and carry them on school grounds. If you are going to a courtroom or state capitol, etc., you cannot have guns. There is a little distinction between loaded and unloaded here. In courtrooms, you cannot have any kind of firearm, whether it's loaded or unloaded. In Capitol building, legislative offices, office or residence of governor or constitutional officers, you cannot have a loaded firearm. Drawing or exhibiting a firearm is prohibited at another person except in self-defense. They say drawing or exhibiting in rude, angry, or threatening manner. I would argue anytime you draw your firearm, it's going to be considered threatening. Basically, don't do it. Whether it's loaded or unloaded does not matter. Using it in any manner in a fight or quarrel is prohibited unless you're facing death or great bodily harm. Threatening acts on a public street or a public highway, it's illegal to draw or exhibit against an occupant of a motor vehicle. Discharging a firearm. Negligent discharge is obviously prohibited. So unintentional discharge is by itself is prohibited. That's Penal Code 246.3. Discharging at an inhabited or occupied dwelling, building, vehicle, aircraft, that's absolutely prohibited. And discharging at an unoccupied aircraft, motor vehicle, or uninhabited building or dwelling is also going to be prohibited unless the owner has authorized you and it is also otherwise lawful. So, for example, it's unlawful to discharge a firearm within city limits. So if I go and authorize someone to go and fire at my house in the middle of a city, it's still going to be prohibited because just firing a firearm in that area is going to be prohibited anyways. Discharging from a motor vehicle. Driver of a motor vehicle is also responsible for the passengers in that vehicle. So if the passenger does that, then the driver is also going to be held responsible. Criminal storage. We already talked about this, that if you store your firearms in an unsafe manner and someone grabs your firearm and goes and does something with it, you're going to be held responsible. Now, that's something, if it causes death or great bodily injury, then it's criminal storage of the first degree. And if it causes injury other than death or great bodily harm, then it's criminal storage in the second degree. If there is no injury, then it's criminal storage in the third degree. Now, this does not apply if your firearm is locked using a firearm safety device or in a locked container that meets California Department of Justice's regulation or is on the roster. So make sure that the firearm safety devices that you use are certified, and that way you give yourself a lot of legal coverage. Sale, transfer, and loaning firearms to people under 21 is prohibited. Possession of firearm or live ammunition by minors is prohibited. So that these two kind of go hand in hand. If you loan your firearm to someone, they're possessing it. So that's going to be prohibited. Unless they're with their parent or guardian, unless they're with a responsible adult and have a written consent from a parent or guardian, or if they're over the age of 16 and just have the written consent. So over 16, you don't have to be with a responsible adult as long as you have the written consent. And also, all of the above apply if you're engaged in lawful activity. So if you're in a lawful recreational sporting, such as like being at the shooting range or something like that, ranching or hunting activity, if you're part of a motion picture, television, other entertainment event, those things are going to be okay. People who are ineligible to possess firearm. Federal law says people that are convicted of crimes punishable by more than 1 year of prison time Whether or not you serve that prison time or not is besides the point. So even if you plea bargain it down to less than 1 year, if the crime is punishable by more than 1 year in prison, you are going to be prohibited, ineligible to possess firearms. Convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, if you're subject of a court order related to domestic violence, unlawful users of or addicted to controlled substances while that is going on, you're going to be ineligible to possess firearms. State law, it says convicted felonies, that's a lifetime prohibition. Convicted of certain misdemeanor offenses is 10-year prohibition. If you have any kind of protection order, or also known as restraining orders, if it's for violent or abusive conduct, if it's a significant danger to self or others, those are all going to be putting you in the category of ineligible to possess firearms. So there's a thing called GVRO, Gun Violence Restraining Order. A law enforcement officer, a family member, or some other people may request a GVRO against you, and it can be temporary for 21 days, or it can be long-term, or a final GVRO that can go 1 to 5 years. And there's another thing called a DVRO, Domestic Violence Restraining Order, which that can also be temporary, which is 21 or 25 days, or it can be long-term for up to 5 years, and you would be ineligible to possess firearms during that period. So if you're a subject of a GVRO or a DVRO, you must relinquish your firearms to law enforcement or dealer within 24 hours. You can get more information on these protection orders from the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Here's the link for that. You can also get a complete list of firearm prohibiting categories and the list of prohibiting misdemeanors from the Office of Attorney General. Here are the 2 links that you can use to go and get more information on those. Before getting to this test, I did want to remind you again, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way, when we post new content, you're going to be made aware of that. It's free to subscribe. Also, like this video and share it with anyone who might benefit from it. I think it's really good training for anyone who's getting into firearms and just making sure that they're doing this in a safe manner. And again, invest in your training. Don't let this be the only training that you ever take with firearms. Don't rely on other people like friends and neighbors if you don't know their certification level and or the level of training that they've had. Just because someone owns a lot of guns and they haven't had any accidents doesn't mean that they're doing things correctly. Build a good foundation for yourself. We have an online package of trainings that you can sign up for. It's constantly updated with videos and how-tos, and by taking part in that, you can also send us, videos of yourself training and videos of or pictures of your targets, and you get constant feedback from certified instructors on how to improve your shooting, how to improve your skills. If you're in the Southern California area, come and take in-person training with us. Or if you're anywhere else, go find certified instructors and invest in your training, build a solid foundation, and make sure that you're doing things right. One of the main things that we always see is people that have started off a wrong foundation, and then now we have to break old habits and build up better habits and try to remove some muscle memory and build new ones. So that's always harder to do. Now that you're getting into this field, it's always good to build that great foundation. As always, feel free to pause here, answer these questions yourself, and then you can play and go over the answers with us. Number 1, it's illegal for a person convicted of any felony offense to possess firearm. That's true. Number 2, to legally give a firearm to your best friend as a birthday gift, you must complete the transfer of the firearm through a licensed firearm dealer. That's also true. Generally, it is illegal to sell, supply, deliver, or give possession of any firearm to a person under 21 years of age. That's also true. Generally, a person may legally have a loaded firearm if otherwise lawful at his or her campsite. That is also true. It is illegal to buy, sell, possess a firearm knowing its identification marks have been erased or altered. That's also true. You can download the full study guide at this link if you want to go over the study guide. This was kind of a comprehensive review of the study guide. So you can download it at this link and go over it yourself. You can also order one. I think it costs $5 and they'll mail one to you. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section. You can also go to a2defensetraining.com and click on the contact us link and ask any questions you might have. Thank you so much for taking the training and stay safe.